All right, welcome to this interview. If you've been following me for more than, I don't know, 5 minutes, you probably know about this amazing woman, Sony. She was a client of mine, I think a couple of years ago. I don't really know the timeline, but I want to interview her for you because she is one of the people who've had not just the most success in us working together, but I honestly believe she's had the biggest turnaround from where she was to where she is now. And I'm honored to even call her a friend on this journey now. So, this is Sony, and what I would love for you to do, Sony, is give us just a cliff note of where were you mentally, emotionally, etc., before I met you, and then where are you now?
I was in the pits of hell. And I'm not even exaggerating, or maybe I am, but I really do recall that time. And I was journaling a lot and just trying to like survive every day. And I just remember just feeling and referring to that time in my life as literally the pits of hell. It was such a dark time. Um, and I was physically very, very sick. And it happened suddenly. So it was like very traumatic, and I didn't know it was happening. I was diagnosed with so many health conditions that were a lot of them unknown at the time. Prognosis for all of them were really bad. So doctors didn't really know like how to help me. They didn't know what my life was going to look like. A lot of bad news. And I was very, very sick, always in the hospital, like the emergency room, and um, just struggling every day to survive. And you can imagine what that does to you emotionally, mentally, because I didn't know if I was going to be okay minute by minute. And I didn't have a lot of support. It was just a very isolating, just a very dark time. And yeah, so that's where I was before I met you.
And then, yeah, I know when we met, there was a lot more that was even going on than I had realized at first. Well, we'll get into more of that in a moment, but tell us, where are you now, mentally, emotionally? Like, what's going on now? What have you been able to do since we worked together? Look at her face before she even says anything. I love it.
Well, it's just wild because I think I remember one of our first calls, maybe it was even the consult call or something, discovery call. I don't even think I was able to do a FaceTime because I think I told you the lights from the phone are too much for me. Um, Honestly, like taking a call was very triggering for my symptoms. I'm sitting in front of bright lights right now. I'm like sitting up. I'm not in bed. And yeah, when I met you, I think all of our calls are just, everything was like, in bed and in the dark with my sunglasses on because I was really sick. And now I'm out and about all the time. I am able to experience life in ways that I had lost. And yeah, I have a baby now. Like before I met you, I didn't have a baby, and now I have a 19-month-old little boy who is very energetic. And so you can imagine, like it was back then, I couldn't even take care of myself. I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't even shower by myself. Eating was very difficult for me, all the things. And now I'm taking care of a toddler. So, totally different. Like, what? What?
Incredible. Like absolutely amazing. So let's start with back when you first came to me. What were the like? So obviously we had talked about the fact that sorry, I have so many thoughts running through my mind that I want to ask and just get into because I fucking love you and I love your transformation. Tell us, where were you emotionally? What were you feeling unable to do in terms of whether it be living in the house or driving and all that? Where were you in terms of where you were emotionally and what you were believing about yourself and your abilities and all that kind of thing?
Oh, I mean, it was a horrible cycle because it's like physically I couldn't do anything. I started losing the ability to do many things. And then when I wasn't getting better, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, I started to believe like, oh my gosh, maybe this is just the rest of my life. And that's what doctors would tell me too. But I mean, um, yeah, I just felt completely hopeless. and very scared all the time, obviously, because there were so many unknowns. Every day, every minute was unpredictable. Like one of the conditions I was diagnosed with was POTS, and with that, literally you could be fine 1 minute and the next minute you're very sick, like in the hospital. And I just never knew. I had no sense of security within my body, within myself, and I was super anxious. I couldn't even, walk to different rooms of my house. I was just confined to a specialized bed that I had to get. Um, and so, yeah, it was just very hopeless and very scary and very sad and lonely. I
And
felt like, and because back then too, before COVID, nobody really knew what POTS was, for instance, and that's just one of many conditions I was diagnosed with, but nobody really even knew what that was.
yeah,
Now it's like everybody's familiar with it.
right.
But back then, nobody knew. And so it was just very lonely as well.
Yeah, I believe that. So, I'm curious, when you first kind of reached out to me, and I think you and I off the recording, I think we had talked about this at some point in our journey in our friendship together and all that. I think when people see your testimonial and updated testimonial, I think sometimes people have a perception of you that like you were just like the easiest client, or that you were like from day one to like just like this like immediate. And it was a quick kind of transformation. But
Yeah.
I am curious because so many people come to me feeling very, I wouldn't say resistant, just believing that all of this is too good to be true, feeling like they might be the hardest person I've ever worked with, or that it's just going to take a long time. Um, but tell me how you felt about even us working together when you first came to me, because you weren't like super open and in this good spot of like, wow, I just got to think positive. Like you were like, just explain, where were you in your headspace when you first came to me?
Okay, well, when I found you, I had, like I said, been suffering already for years.
Right.
Um, and I have a, medical background. So it's like I got all the answers I could from the medical community, and I had access to like the best healthcare, you know what I mean? And when I wasn't getting better in that avenue, I started to feel like maybe it's just me, maybe I'm crazy, I don't know. But I wasn't getting better physically, and I knew like all I can do is help myself mentally. But that space too, I had worked with so many different therapists, counselors, pastors, just anyone and anybody who could help me, even just random people. I'd be like, talk to me. I don't know, like, I don't know. I tried to, just find relief from
Mhm.
anybody in any way possible. So when I found you, I was at my like I had tried everything and everyone. And a lot of the stuff, helped in some way, but it was either temporary or it wasn't like it. I wasn't living my life. I still was like in the same, I would find myself sometimes even worse because you would get that hope and feel like, oh my gosh, I'm getting better. And then I would cycle back and it was almost worse. And so when I found you and you were making all these claims, like, and first of all, you're like this young buck, like I'm looking at you like, what does this kid know about,
Yeah.
life and struggles? And you're making these claims about, getting results and lasting results, and you don't need to go through and dig through your childhood traumas and do all this stuff. And it was very fascinating because I've never heard anything like that. But then of course, I was very skeptical. I was like, is this a joke? But I was so desperate. I was like so like at my wit's end of having tried everything. So I was like, what do I have to lose? And I just got curious. But I was so skeptical. I didn't even reach out to you, I think, until many, many months of watching you. Like I was like stalking your page. And actually your stuff would just pop up and I would um just be listening to things that you were sharing, and it was just resonating with me. Like obviously something about it, there was a truth to it that I maybe wasn't ready to hear, or so anyways, when I finally reached out, I think I felt safe enough to to just ask questions. But even then, I was still really skeptical. I was like, he's just trying to sell me some program or trying to get me to whatever, and it's not going to work. And I'm going to have lost another, investment or my time or just my feelings, like feeling hopeful, like I want to get better, and it's going to be crushed again. And that was the biggest thing. It's like money's one thing, but I was like, I just don't want to put myself, emotionally into something that's going to, not work out. But like I said, I just found your videos just so it just resonated with me. I felt like there was something about you that I could trust. And I'm a Christian, so it was something I prayed about, and I really felt a comfort to like move forward with you. And I don't know if I should go into it now, but I think, most of our sessions that we went into, it was like I was so resistant. You would like kind of work through things, and I'd be like, not roll my eyes resistant, but I was just kind of like, what? And you would, have us, in the group calls that we did. I don't know if you still do group calls, but had us do things that I was like, is this a joke to him? And but then I would do it. I would do these exercises or whatever prompts you would have us do, or and it just was crazy. The things I would experience, like changes. And they were micro transformations, micro
Mhm.
experiences that were like so profound. But there was one incident, one call, where I don't know if you remember, but I think a breakdown and I was basically going to quit. Like, don't talk to me anymore, Tyler. That's it. I don't think this is going to work. And it was like our third call, but I was already like, wait, I didn't get instantly better. I didn't get like instant results. And I think I just like cried on the call, and you just held this space for me in that moment where you weren't like, let me coach her out of this state and just get her to feel what I want her to feel, or get her to see how she shouldn't be in this state. You were just held a space for me to be like, yeah, that's how you feel right now. And I could tell it sucks. And I don't know, I think that was profound to my nervous system, proving to me like, okay, this is a safe space. I can like surrender, completely trust Tyler, trust the process. And that's when things started shifting, because from that moment, when I realized, okay, I can trust Tyler and just drop this skeptical act, that's when I started doing the things that you were, just prompting.
Yeah.
And that's when I started seeing the changes.
It's amazing your journey. There's so many questions I want to dig into if you don't mind in this. One of them, going back to what you said about how you're watching my content for a while and you were like, skeptical but curious and all that. Um, the skepticism for anyone watching, we can all understand the skepticism
Yeah.
and like why that. So I'm
Yeah.
not going to ask why we're skeptical because that makes sense. But I'm curious to know what you were hearing or seeing, hearing me say or seeing me do, whatever it might have been. What made you curious to keep watching, to keep seeing if there's something there? What was that for you?
Well, for me, might not be for other people, but for me, it was the way you were sharing the information. And I'm a very like energy person. I can just kind of feel authenticity from people, whether it's in front of them or through the screen. And the confidence that you exuded with the claims that you were making, like even as a medical professional, we are trained, like you cannot make claims for anything, even if you know something works, like because that one person, it may not work for them. So you have to be very careful. But you were saying things in such an absolute way with confidence. And I think that got my brain to just at least step outside of what I felt like I knew, whether it was like
Mhm.
medically or just my experience, because that's what happens. We experience some things for so long that that does become our reality and our truth. But that doesn't mean that it's an absolute truth. And sometimes you do have to step outside of that reality and experience, different possibilities. And you were saying things that I was like, okay. Um, but one of the things I remember seeing your reels about is the different types of therapies, and how
Mhm.
there's no such thing as like PTSD, or what anxiety really is, or just different things that are true that I didn't really understand at the time, but those are the things that were resonating. And again, just the way you shared it. And yeah, I just felt like, I want to explore this. What?
I love that. So the other question I had for you, you were saying that and like I'm gonna say this like to the person watching this right now who needs to hear this. I say this with all the love because Sony knows I love her. She was resistant as but I say it with all the love. I remember beginning to coach you, and like I'm a very dedicated, very determined, very creative individual. So even like when one approach is not working, I will change my approach until because I was like, I'm here to serve. I'm not here to be the know-it-all. I'm here to figure out what's going to help this person. And I remember thinking in our first couple calls, I'm like, I got off the call knowing that we got some progress and we talked about some things. Um, and I remember thinking there's going to be there's going to need to be a workaround, if you will, or a trust building process or something of that nature is kind of my thought process of what I was going to have to do before we could get to the what I would call like the transformation. I could just feel it, and I was willing to go whatever that distance was, just because I'm like, she's hurting, she's in pain. I know I can help. We just got to get to the point where she and is okay with the process. And so I'm like, all right, let's do it. So I do remember the moment. I remember literally where I was sitting, what country I was in,
Mhm.
because I'm traveling all the time.
Yeah.
I remember exactly that moment because I remember in that moment on the call, a couple minutes in, and I thought, I'm not going to coach her. This call is going to be sit here and sit in it with you. And for anyone watching, like that's not even my quote unquote style in that because I know that people have a transformational moment, I'm very often wanting to get there as creatively and as fun as possible. But there's these moments where I can see somebody just needs to feel seen, heard, and understood because maybe for the first time in their life, that'll be their opportunity. Um, and I noticed after that call, there might have been, I think, one other moment where I remember having you stand up and like going like yes or something. And I remember you were like, yes. And then you sat there and you were like between like you had a moment of crying, you had a moment of like anger and frustration. And I remember just asking you like, hey, Sony, do you trust me? And I was explaining the logic which wasn't going through, but there was a moment that because that was the last call where you were quote unquote resistant.
Mhm.
After that, your breakthroughs were happening at such a rapid freaking pace that I was like, she could teach this stuff. I swear. I'm like, she's doing everything, but before that, she was doing nothing, so to speak. It was wild. But what I want to zoom into is when you were doing you said, when I had, when I was prompting you or having you do like little exercises, be it yes or whatever the other things were that I don't even remember at this moment, you might. Number one, what were some of those exercises, some of the things you were doing? Because I don't want to hold that back from everyone watching. And what were your first thoughts about them when they were presented to you?
Yeah, I think I remember some of the early group calls. I think a lot of times I was either off camera. I wasn't like camera shy, but I remember I was just like wanting, I mean, it was just too much with the screen and um honestly just the state that I was in, it was so pathetic. I didn't even want to like see myself on the screen or show myself. And so I think just that alone was a lot in
Mm,
some ways. But then I was like so lonely and like so desperate again. I just wanted to show up in any capacity. But to have that space where I really did feel so safe and like I will say I have done other Zoom group call type meetings with others and I have never I like still think about those people I met. I seriously genuinely think about them and I learned so much from those sessions. Um but yeah, I remember you would have like tell us as a group to like the change your state, like let's get up and just say yes or do a pose. And I just thought that was like what? Um Well, because and I don't know. Again, my I'm just speaking of my own experience. But at the
yeah,
time, it's like I
please.
was so, physically sick. It's like I can't even sit up in bed. That's all I thought about. It's like I can't even sit up in bed. He wants me to stand up and put my arms up. I'm gonna pass out. That's my thought process. But like even after that, like so sometimes if I struggled on the call, I would get off and then realize like, wow, at least for that few minutes that he had us do something, I wasn't thinking about how I'm always in bed and how this is all I can do. It shifted my brain to a different reality, different possibility of like, oh, I could at least, and, you know, and you were so encouraging about that too, and so respectful at meeting us exactly where we are. And I think that was so, so important for me. But yeah, you were like, if you can't stand up, just sit and, you know, put your hands up, or at least think, imagine what you would do, you know? And that
Mhm.
was so, again, it's such an internal work. It's not always about like, did I physically stand up and do it? It's
Yeah.
like, what do I believe I can do, or just imagine it? I loved the one that you did with the colors, look around the room, and I think it was like color brown, actually. And you were like, look for the color brown and, you know, noticing. So again, same thing. Like I'm noticing things that I never noticed before. Or how I had awareness of like what my brain is noticing because of what I'm telling it to notice. And
Yeah.
then you would see like, think about your butthole. And I'd be like, what? And then I was like, oh my gosh, my butthole. I'm like very aware of my anus. And you were like explaining how, and that was a fun one for me personally, but it's so true. It's like you never think about your butt until, you know, Tyler's telling you to
Yeah.
think about your butt. And so it's like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that like I'm not thinking about that just made my world so much bigger, even from this confined, you know, space.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other part of that too is, um, I just lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, not only thinking about what's possible and what I'm like all the things that I'm not aware that I'm not thinking about, but it made me realize what I am thinking about and how I'm thinking about them. And no wonder I was so miserable because I was just always focused on how horrible things felt. And that was my
Yeah.
reality. And you were so compassionate and met me there. But you were like, hey, there are other things simultaneously happening. So while I felt
Mm.
dizzy and had heart palpitations and I was scared and hopeless, I could still think about my butt at the same time. So that was a big one. Um, and then I think people with chronic illness or invisible illnesses or just any kind of health trauma, I think they could relate to this a lot. But it you really challenged me with this one. I think this was one of our early calls too. But it was like I came to you and I was like, Taylor, I don't know how you're saying like being sick and having cancer or whatever doesn't cause anxiety. I was like, you don't know what this is like. And I remember being upset that like, oh, of course Tyler can say that. He has never experienced blah blah blah. What this is like. And it kind of made me angry because, you know, I know that you care, but it's like, and I and we know that people can't know what we're experiencing unless they're going through it, which we don't want other people to. But anyways, you shared an example about your uncle, you know, and your
Mm.
uncle and how he had cancer, and you're like, yeah, and actually he died. And I was like, what? Like, I love how you always just like don't say what I think you're gonna say, but you were trying to encourage me, and you're like, yeah, so my uncle had cancer, and he was like one of the happiest like non-anxious people, you know? And I was like, that's so weird to me. Like I didn't understand that. And you've had to say it in so many different ways, but that one stuck with me. And I'm like, wait, if his uncle had a very bad health issue, it still didn't survive, but he just lived this fulfilling life. I was like, oh, that's possible for me because again, I was in a place where it's like, I don't know if I'm going to get better. What if this is as good as I'm going to get? Am I going to live the rest of my life miserable? And just because this is my circumstance doesn't mean that it dictates how I feel and what's going on. And that was the first time I was like, oh wait, I can actually be happy through having POTS and I can be free and empowered despite the circumstances. And that was like, again, just so wild. But
That's amazing. One thing I'm loving everything that you're saying, and I guarantee the person watching is like, what? Having some reality shifts right now. One thing that I remember you telling me from a different conversation, I'm sure you'll recall it the second I say it. I was giving you another example of, for example, if you are at a funeral and someone cracks a joke, you
mhm.
could be
Oh, yes.
laughing at the same time when you're in the middle of grieving. You
Yep.
suddenly, because you change your focus to the joke, you're laughing, and that laughter is very real, very authentic, and you're not grieving in that, you're not upset in that moment. And I remember you being like there's other shifts there too. So there's so many little shifts that you had that are belief shifts and perception shifts and reality shifts from these little examples, which I think is
Yes.
amazing. I want to share for anyone watching what Sony's referring to in terms of like looking for a color or like your anus. is noticing that like there's so many things right now that we're not paying attention to. And whatever we focus on, regardless of circumstances, whatever we're focusing on or putting our attention on, that's what our body feels emotionally. You saw it even just now when Sony said, thank your anus, we both laughed because the idea of that, you see that in your head, it's funny. And so the examples that Sony's referring to is the fact that I was showing her how we can change our focus and thus change what we feel quickly. And so many of these things gave you big shifts. I'm curious. There was another couple of exercises that I did that I know had a big impact on you, and I don't remember what you were using them for, but I know the purpose of them. One of them, if you recall, was when I had you guys like stepping out of an image and then replaying a
I was
scene back.
literally about to be like, I have to share that one because there's just
Yeah,
so
go
many.
go
And like
ahead
I
from your
said, I
perspective.
don't want to forget. I mean, there's so many things, and this call could like go on forever. So I'm leaving probably a lot out, you know. But yeah, that's wild because I was literally just thinking about that. And actually that one was so powerful. It wasn't even when you and I were talking. It was a group session. And it was someone else sharing, by the way, an experience that she was going through so like I've never even experienced what she was experiencing. Um, but that's what was also powerful is that it doesn't matter if you're dealing with a health issue or a death or a relationship thing or you just want to lose weight or whatever it is, it's like it's all the same work. You know, the foundation and the path is still the same and how it affects our our ourselves, you know. But yeah, this one you had us you know, shrink the image, do the black and white, take out all the color. We're going to turn down the noise. We're going to you know, fast forward it. We're going to rewind the image. We're going to play a funny music. You know, dun 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 dun. Dun. So we're gonna play a funny song, and you're gonna just do this, flip this image or whatever it was. And I remember I was like following along as you were working with the other girl, and I had severe PTSD with I'm just saying that because that's how people understand what it is. But you remember with the ambulance ride when I had my near death experience, that's when my life changed that moment. And I was in the back of the ambulance, completely paralyzed. I couldn't breathe. I was very sick. And you can imagine just a very scary experience. And so for years, and I live right next to a fire station. Every time I would hear those sirens, I was just like, it was like that moment over and over again. And after I did that exercise, and by the way, I had seen so many, including a hypnotherapist, to work through that, you know. And, you know, like I said, I have a background working in the hospital, and I used to be like obsessed with, you know, anything medical. And if I saw or heard an ambulance or a fire truck, I would get almost excited because it reminded me of something I loved. And then after my health issue, it just reminded me of something that like scared me so much. And I never knew how to get out of that. And even with all the therapies I did, it just almost amplified it. And then I did this with you. Literally, I think that exercise took like, gosh, like I don't even know, not even 2 minutes, not even. And literally after that, I almost I never had an issue hearing a siren or seeing an ambulance or someone says I'm going to the hospital. I don't get triggered at all. I think I like kind of laughed, you know, like when I think about it now, it's just like someone telling me like, "Hey, I licked my toe," or I don't know. It's just like it doesn't have any kind of, you know, negative reaction.
That's incredible. That
That
is
was a big
so
one.
incredible. Um, you know, there's a few things that interested me about working with you is like one, um, what would you say you might remember better than me because you were on the receiving side um, from the time we started working together, maybe not to the end because at the time we were working together you were doing like a program that had a specific kind of time length to it, um, whereas now it's just results focused. But nonetheless, how long do you think you'd say it was from when we started working together until not when we stopped working together, but until like I remember you texted me and you're like, I just drove to the Dallas airport. And that
Yeah.
was maybe like a week or two, roughly, after
Hmm.
you had messaged saying your big accomplishment was that you walked down to the next road or whatever. And I asked you if you can do that, what's stopping you from one more? Something similar to that. And it was like I think like a week later, we're like, I'm at the Dallas airport, and I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
So tell us about that from when you started working with me. How long roughly was it, would you say?
Gosh, I get like, I don't know, when I think about that experience, it's like, is this real life? Every day I wake up and it's like Christmas morning. So I'm like, how is this my life? Because yeah, I couldn't even walk to my mailbox, and my challenge was walking to my neighbor's house and couldn't even do that. And I think it was less than 2 weeks for sure. And
Yeah,
I think just a few calls, one-on-ones with you, and then maybe like two or three group calls. I don't even remember. It was, I feel like pretty quick. Um, but again, during that time, I had the support with the modules and the
mm,
videos that you had. So I was, doing all that because I was like, oh, I'm gonna figure this out. And of course I had that, but you were just so supportive throughout the entire process. And like I said at the beginning of the call, it was so many micro moments and micro exercises or shifts that just made all the difference. And but yeah, it was a very short time.
it was. And so to the point of lasting change happening in moments, and by the way, that doesn't mean for anyone watching, it doesn't mean that your life goes from complete crap, and let's say the way Sony explained her life at the very beginning, it doesn't mean you go from that to the riches and the wealth and the health. It doesn't mean it goes from like this to that in a moment, but there are very distinct moments where it goes from what it is to the next level. And then what it
Hmm.
is, there's distinct moments of,
Yeah.
and each of those moments created lasting change from where it was to where it is now. And you have another one, so on and so forth. Uh, and I'm curious because so many of the people watching are experiencing anxiety around driving because of
Mhm.
panicking and all these. I know they'd be dying for me to ask you what, because they're all aware of my stuff, right? Focus, physiology,
Sure.
the state change, belief change, like the black, they're aware of all the things. And
Okay.
if they're not, well, now they're curious. If they're a new person watching, I'm curious for you specifically. If you think back to the moment where walking to the next door neighbor's house was the big accomplishment, and it was to your credit, but from there to being able to drive way out there in Texas, what was the moment where something clicked for you? What was that moment? What was it like? Let's dive into that for a second, if you can remember. And take a
Yeah, I'm
moment
trying to recall because
for sure.
well, I think I for sure remember I wasn't in my head. I think when you have, for me, I dealt with severe health issues for many years at that point, and it kind of gets ingrained, and I got trained to be hyper alert and to like think of everything all the time. So I was like living in my head. And I remember that drive day. I mean, that morning, my friend texted me that she was just doing a quick day trip for work. So it's not something I knew beforehand. I don't know that this would have worked if it were that way, pre-planned. But she was like, I'm in Dallas. I want to come see you. And she didn't know my situation or whatever. But I was like, I'm going to come get you. Why I offered that, I have no idea because I literally haven't drove like in like years. I don't know. And I don't know. I kind of joke about it like it's a moment of insanity. Like I went crazy for a second. No, but it's really, I think, a moment of clarity and just um, trust and security and just, I don't know, why not? Like possibility. But it definitely wasn't in my head. And that was something that I consistently experienced while I was always working with you. You would just have us be so present and so yeah, that's the main thing that I can think of because, you know, thinking about it now, I'm like, oh gosh, there's so many things I could have freaked myself out about driving. Like, I haven't driven in so long. Am I okay to drive? Like, what if something, all the what ifs. But I think at the time I was just thinking of all the what is possible. Um, yeah.
Do you think you do you think that you consciously made a shift of okay, no, none of the what ifs. what can I do? Like, was there a conscious shift or was it more just like, what was that like?
I mean, I think at some level there has to be the consciousness, right? Because you have to get your keys and like remember how to get there, or like there is a
Yeah.
part of that. But to be honest, I think a big part of it was something that I just experienced. And it was through the micro work that we did together where you kind of held my hand through, or more like not even hold my hand through. It was like you created this space
Mm.
and here's some things you do, and you kind of like, and I didn't do this, but I know that Tony Robbins does this where they like walk on the hot coal
Yeah.
or the
Yeah.
spikes or whatever, and that's crazy to me. But like, how do you're not holding someone's hand through, you're not like holding them on it, you're
Yeah.
having someone walk on the coal and get to the other side. And I think it was sort of that kind of, like, I don't know what the logistics are behind that, but I felt like that, like you just created this space and it seemed so scary and impossible for me. But the things that you were sharing and just opening my mind to and having me question and having me just kind of meet you or meet me rather, um, it's like my body just, trusted itself. And, like everything else we do in our lives, we don't really think too much about it. We're
Yeah.
aware that we're doing it, like brushing your teeth, why and why it's good for you, why we need to do it. And you're thinking about it, but it's just something you trust yourself in doing. And it was something that simple, even though it seemed like such a major thing. And I know a lot of people struggle with driving. But yeah, that was wild.
Tell me, you mentioned you trusted your body. And I hear in my DMs from clients, from so many people coming at me from different angles, and the same pattern is coming up. If I were to be one of them and I was asking you, like Sony, but how do you trust your body? If there was like a one, two, three, an A, B, C, an analogy, an epiphany moment that brought you from yes, yes, but how to now I trust my body. How would you describe to somebody to do that?
Gosh, this is such a thick question. Like, I feel like there's a lot of layers to this, to
Sure.
answering this, right? But I will try to simplify it from just my experience and what I can just leave here. And that is, again, the moments that I experienced with you, just through the exercises or just listening or talking, whatever it was, allowed me to experience moments of security, safety, acknowledgement, whatever it is that, our bodies need, that we need as people. And even though they may have not been like we didn't do this for years, this was just, a few weeks. But once our body experiences something, it remembers it. And I think and the other thing I wanted to bring up is you taught me like the PTSD, or we have that one moment of trauma and it changes the trajectory. Like a lot of people have one moment of trauma in their lives and like they suffer for that for years. I was one of them, right? And you were like, the brain, the neuroplasticity about it is neutral. And if you can have one moment of trauma to define years of your life, why can't you have one moment of freedom or empowerment or happiness or whatever it is, and that be the trajectory of your life or your experience for many years? And that one really stuck with me because it's like made me aware of like how our brains are designed, because it is designed to like keep us safe and protect us and no bad things. But the power that we have to like say, hey brain, I know you feel unsafe or I know it feels scary, but these are tools or these are ways that I can assure you like it's
Mm.
good. And then there's something else I wanted to say, so I might have to circle back to this, or um, if you can repeat the question too one more time, because I know
Yeah,
it just slipped my
yeah, of
mind. It
course.
was
So I had asked if I was somebody else from my
trust the
audience
body.
asking, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
how would you go about trusting the body? Yeah, exactly. You're giving great answers, by the way, but yeah, that was the question.
Oh yeah, I know. I wanted to say that, and then there was one main thing that I was like, oh, but if I, just kind of sum it up, because like I said, there's so many layers to. I feel like, or for me, how it was that way. But to trust the body.
That's all right. Let me ask you this, and
Mhm.
maybe we'll hit that neural. our pathway, and you'll remember. Um, because I know that this will be something that everyone's curious about too. With where you were when we first met, I think it was two-ish years ago, give or take. Um, what do you feel nowadays? Because one thing that I think people confuse about my work is that you will never experience nerves that, oh fudge, I almost hit that thing. That you'll never experience nerves, like nervousness again in your life, or anxiety or fear or anything, which isn't true. But with you and I talking, even with different things happening in your life, different natural stresses and all that, you're still what I would call like your emotional home, your ability to deal with these things. It doesn't seem like you're in a anxiously riddled place anymore. So tell us, like, how are you feeling nowadays in general?
Two words come to mind with that question, and it's freedom and empowerment. I'm sure
Wow.
there's like so many that I can say, but I just right off the bat, it's just freedom and empowerment. And yeah, I think that was my big thing with you too, because you were like, yeah, like I remember you got on a call one time and you like got really sick. Like I think it was COVID. And I was like waiting for you to be like, oh no, I think it's COVID, or, and be anxious too. And I was gonna be like, see, here you are, like, but you weren't. You were like, and you were traveling, and there was a lot going on with you too. And you were just like, hey guys, and you showed up, and I was like, maybe he's performing. He just wants to look like he's not anxious, whatever. But you literally never brought it up again. You weren't like, I need to go find out what's wrong, or the doctors say I need to do this. And you were just like, hey, I don't feel good. It really sucks. I actually feel really horrible. So I'm going to try to get through this call. And I've got this going on. But like life was still happening. And I was like, wait, how is he not freaked out? Like people are dying from COVID or whatever. And you just weren't. You were just living life as usual. And so, yeah, it's very true what you say that, doing this work or whatever, it's not that you'll never be faced with challenges or things that do bring up feelings of anxiety or stress or anger. It's not that those emotions are bad. It's just for me, I was living in that state constantly. I wasn't living my life because of a lot of those emotions as well, which I blamed on a lot of my physical limitations. But then I think I remember learning about this one man who had tuberculosis. He caught it as a child, and he was the only man, he's recently passed away, but he was the only man who still lived in an iron lung. He actually lives here in Dallas, Texas, or he did, but literally completely um, dependent on other people to care for him. He cannot move, and his head just sticks out. And like, he can't do anything. Can you imagine? Like, at least there's some people who are paralyzed or whatever, and they can be in a wheelchair and kind of, have some mobility in life, but he was just confined, and he died at a pretty old age. He's like written books. He's
Mhm.
gone to college. He got like a law degree. Like he was like thriving. Like, and I'm over here in bed and I can move my limbs. I could like talk. I could breathe for myself. I could wipe my own butt. And I realized like, wow, there is such power in the way that we think about things despite the physical limitations. And so anyways, that was a big thing for me is like you were opening my eyes to these things that despite circumstances or whatever, we could be free and we can have power. And so even now, I'm a mom. So as a mom, I think all the moms know it's like a constant state of stress and anxiety because you're trying to protect a child and keep them alive. And I can tell you now, I feel anxiety every day because it's like, well, and not like in the same way, but I'll explain it. But it's like, my child right now is sick too, and it's like he coughs. I'm like, oh, what is? But I immediately go back to this different baseline, which is like, he's look at him, he's thriving, and having this like innate trust that like whatever happens next, then I'll deal with it. Versus before, it was like catastrophic thinking and preparing and doing and freaking out even before anything happened, which is, why people get so crippled with anxiety. But now it's like, yeah, if anything needs to get urgent care, whatever, then I deal with it then. And I have that capacity to do that now versus before, it was like just we're all gonna die. Like it was horrible. So I
That's
have such a sense of freedom. Like I get to live my life and enjoy moments with my son, even if he's coughing or whatever, or even if I don't feel good. And I feel like that's real power, not power through controlling everything and making sure I'm only okay when everything else is okay. So that's a big difference too from then and now.
I love that. I think that there's just going to be this last question, but if I can think of another couple to squeeze in here, I will, just because I want to give them all the value. And thank you for not holding back, by the way. Um, if I was a new client coming in to work with me, as you once were, looking back, knowing that you've been super successful, and I don't mean that bright or any kind of way other than what it is, you've been very successful in getting where you wanted to go. And you're a great role model for everyone watching. This is why I was so damn excited to do this. You're a role model for me. Um, what would need to be like the beliefs or the mindset or the focus, whatever you would want to call it, that you would say somebody would have to come into this with in order to get where you are now, like faster? How would they need to be thinking like about coming into this? What would their mindset have to be to get them through results faster versus it being like this push and resistance and all those things, do you think?
Gosh, I feel like, well, I mean, I think openness, just be open and trust the process, because it's funny because I say that, but I came in, I mean, I was open-minded, but I came in pretty resistant, like we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And I came in wanting results right away. And I came in, very uncomfortable. I mean, just all the stuff. But I think having the openness and honestly just experience you and your specialty. Because even if you've trained under this person or this theory or whatever the thing, it's like you do bring such a unique um, approach. It's very encompassing
Mm.
and it is very different. And so I think just be open to something so different, instead of bringing in, what you have learned, how other therapists do things, or what you learn the textbooks say, or what you feel like it needs to be. And I think that's a big one is people are always like, well, how did you get better so fast, so fast? And it's like, I don't even know if it was you told me that, but it was like, it's going to take however long it takes. It's not, you didn't rush the process. Um, it's going to just take as long as it's going to take. But you also make claims like it can be instant. And so again, if you're just open to that possibility, I think that's where you win. But if you're already coming in and you're like, well, he's saying that, and that might be true for that person, but not for me, then that's what you believe in, and that's what you're going to get. But
Yeah.
I think, again, I was so desperate, and you seemed so confident in what you were saying. I was like, what do I have to lose to try this on for a second? And he says, I can change instantly. Why not? And so I think just being really open and trusting to that for me has been, you know, and obviously the grace of God, it's just all thanks to God, but to even leading me to you. Um, but yeah, I think that's really important.
I think that's huge. The pattern I've seen in having helped, I don't know, 3+ hundred people since working with you, the pattern does seem to be, from my point of view, that people who are the most open to, I don't care what I've done in the past or how I've been in the past, I'm going to show up without the stories and
Yeah.
all that in my head, even if they're up there. Just like I'm going to quiet that down and just do kind of whatever's in front of me. I've invested time, money, energy into something. I'm just going to do whatever the things are
Yeah.
as if they are definitely the answers. And if they are not for whatever reason, I'll move to the next thing. But they don't come in with resistance. They come in believing something will work. This sounds like it will. I'm open. Tell me what to do. Um, and that's what you just explained. So, for anyone watching, if you come in with that mindset, should you choose to work with me or even somebody else, whatever it might be, act as if that is the answer and just be completely open. I think that's fantastic. Something else I was going to ask you, but I think you've given a lot of freaking value here. I think there was one other thing. Do you have anything else you want to add right now that we've left out as I think about
I
what the
mean,
next?
Tyler, I'm sure there's so many because, there's so many things. And even after working with you, I feel like breakthroughs. Where I'll apply even the same things to different things or new things, and it's just always something so amazing. Yeah, and I'm like, I've said I can't remember what I wanted to say about the question about trusting,
Hmm. Fine.
ourselves. And as
Yeah.
soon as we get off, I'm gonna remember it. So I might just message you or I'll share it later. Um, but yeah, I can't think of, I mean, I can think of
Uh,
many things, but gosh. But yeah, I think, and I just want to speak this to you in particular because that's just, but the space that you created again and meeting not just me, but I saw how you worked with other people. So
mhm.
another big thing that was sort of like I was already looking for it. Like I came in already looking for how you were gonna approach our sessions. And are you gonna just basically read a script? Are you gonna just basically regurgitate things that you've learned and results you've seen in other people and you just wanted to like compound that into each person as if we're not like all like we're so different. We all have, you know what I'm saying. And but you just met every person where they were. You weren't you were so amazingly patient with people no matter how confused they got or how they like over explained or analyzed or pushed back. You were just always so kind and so um gentle but so effective, you know? And met people where they were, but you're like, but let's try going over there or let's try this on. And that was the coolest thing to witness. And then I got to obviously experience that with you too, you know?
Oh, good. Thank
And
you.
I think that's a huge part of healing is like you said, like just a human need is just to feel seen and validated and sometimes just hugged in the moment that we're just breaking down and it sucks and you were that person. And I have worked with people who had a lot of letters behind their names and many years of experience and stuff. And again, I did learn and get some value from working with them too. But, I wasn't, I didn't have this kind of freedom and empowerment and the results.
I
And I
love
think you
that.
were I think you love results. I think just you as a person, you're just very like, yeah, let's get there. And so I think whoever's watching this is what I'll say to whoever's watching it is that if your goal is you want to, be able to travel or you want to grow in your relationship or have whatever financial security or get rid of this anxiety or um, whatever it is just trust the process and check yourself, like how are you coming into this? And I think a lot of people subconsciously may even sabotage with you. Like they'll come in and invest their time and money and effort just so that they can say, like, see, it didn't work. But just make that a little tab in your head and just be like, your body's trying to like make sure you stay in this state, but Tyler and you want to get out of it. You want that life that you want, right? So it's like, just go for it. Put
Love
your hands
that.
up in the air and be like, yes. No.
Yeah.
That was so
The-
hard for me. I don't know. But anyways,
oh,
yeah.
it was. You know what? So I'll wrap it up with one other question, and I think this will be fantastic. And if we want to do a number two, I would be more than happy to, and I'm sure the audience would too. Before I ask my last question, you know what I find really interesting, and I say this to both you, Sony, and the person who's on the other end watching this right now. Sometimes the most simple things that I ask you to do, or that anyone who's giving you advice to be successful in some area is giving you to do, the most simple things can feel like the most challenging thing. Not that they're challenging in nature, like it's not challenging to lift up the marker. But if you
Yeah.
think that lifting up the marker is stupid or it's not going to work or I feel ridiculous, like our own
Yeah.
internal stuff about
Yeah.
the thing, instead of lifting it, if I tell you to lift it and go like this, go, ooh, that's simple in nature.
Yeah.
But if you're like just, you're gonna be like, woo, or like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's gonna be
That's
like an attitude
mhm.
about it. And I remember telling you and the rest of the people at the time when I ran the group calls, I said, just stand up and just go like, yes, or something. But I said, do it in a way where like you're actually celebratory about it. And at first, you and a couple of other people were like, yes. And I was like, oh, come on, we can do better. And I wanted you guys to experience what it felt like to just completely let go, make a strong gesture up, and just let the voice out. Just yes in a playful way. And when you guys finally did it, and for some of you, it took a couple calls, that's totally fine. But when you did it, I saw everyone's face was like, because you experienced a state change instantly, like by your own choice, and it's the most beautiful thing. So I wanted to say that, like, just yes. Um, some of the times, the things that we need to do to change and really change our life are so simple, but if we think it's stupid or why would that ever work, and that's the story, it can feel challenging to implement those tiny things. Which brings me to the very last question. You can answer this as short as long as you want, but I am curious for the audience's sake. Um, from your perspective, in a nutshell, what makes Tyler in his approach in general different than the average, or maybe not even the average, because I'm not putting him down. What makes Tyler in his approach in a nutshell different than some other therapists that might be out there explaining radically different things than Tyler?
I feel like I have so many good things to say. Okay, from like you said, my experience of you. You are genuinely one of the most caring people. Of course, I don't like know you. You know, maybe like you get off the calls and you're like beating your cat. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. But I feel like you are just so caring because I would watch kind of your interaction. I'm a big observer, and I would watch, even just your facial expressions or the way you say things to people, um, and just for every single person. I almost felt like a fly on the wall, and it's like only that person exists in the entire world, and you just care so much about that person. And when you're any kind of therapist or coach or doc, whatever, and you're meeting so many people, you do get kind of like not burnt out, but you just get kind of go through the motions, like, okay, now tell me why, blah blah blah, and you never lost that empathy or just care. And for me, that was important because I just felt like nobody cared, and I was in a state where I'm like, please, somebody help me, somebody care, somebody see what I'm going through. But, these doctors, they see sick people every day. So I'm just another patient. Or, these pastors, they talk to people who have like horrible life things happen. And it's like, I'm going to pray for you and it'll be okay and trust God, which is all great. But it's like, I just wish someone really just, again, could see me and just validate that this is just really tough. And then the energy that you bring to not just have me sit there, but you were like, okay, we acknowledged. And then it's not like you dismissed it, but it's like you almost allowed me to bring it with me. You're like, yeah, you got that issue. Okay, let's bring it along. Let's take it for a ride. And it was just like the coolest thing because yeah, when you're a person in a state of fight or flight or just chronic fear or these limiting beliefs, which we all have, whatever it is, you don't want to let it go, right? Our subconscious wants to hang on to these things because that's what's keeping us safe, even though it might be something we hate. And you didn't reject that, which is important on a, I guess, conscious level because subconsciously is trying to protect us and we don't want to let it go, but we know it's not serving us, right? And so if someone comes in, which a lot of therapists do, and they're like, oh, you shouldn't think that way or you shouldn't feel that way because that's not true. It's all true what they're saying, but then subconsciously we feel like, wait, you're rejecting me or something's wrong with me. But at least in my experience with you, I never felt like something was wrong with me, that I was doing anything wrong. If I didn't do something, you didn't like shame or make us feel like, "Oh, come on, you should be doing it." You're just, all right, let's keep moving. And like bring it on, like let's just all go. And so for me, I felt like that was what expedited the process again into trusting you during these exercises. And again, it was also cool to see how you didn't, it's not like a cookie cutter thing for every single person. You just again cater and personalize, for what each person needs where they are. You were working with, when I worked with you, you had like a teenager and children. Like you had I think a young child, like a younger person, and then you had like really older people, and then you had like you just worked with, it didn't matter, or guys or girls. It was the coolest thing. And so I think that's super unique. Um, you cuss a lot, which no, is also different. No, but I think you bring to the table a lot of, you're saving the people a lot of time and money too, because I guess the training or the things that you have learned for yourself and how you've consolidated, right? Is that the word? Like
Yeah.
yeah, pretty much got the best of everything that's out there, I guess you can say, and you've kind
Mm,
of created this, you know, place. and then you kind of cater it to different people. I don't know how you do it, honestly, Tyler. It's like so much work. Even if you just talk to one family member about a problem, it just seems like, oh my gosh, but you're able to care for so many people in such a way. And anyway, that's what sealed the deal for me. And of course,
Well,
I didn't know this like all in one thing. I think it was just like how I experienced you in any relationship, you just continue to grow and experience that person. And but I can
yeah.
say that all now. Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate that immensely. I appreciate it so that others hear that point of view. But I also just appreciate it because not even from a coach, like the identity of being a coach point of view, but from the identity of just a person, I have cared so deeply about people since I was a little boy. My mom raised me to be just the most empathetic, caring, genuine person. And so for me, from literally day one that I can remember in my childhood, when I saw somebody upset, it like ripped my heart open. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, if I could just like take the pain and like throw it over there, and they're like, this again. I'm like, how do I do that? That was my obsession my whole life. And so um I got to high school and saw that everybody was in therapy. I was never, and I still am not against therapists. It's the
Yeah.
approach that most of them have been trained in, to be
Yeah.
very clear about that. When I saw that they were just not getting results, I'm like, there's gotta be, even if nobody on the planet's figured it out, I'm going to, because there's gotta be a way. There just has to be a way. Um, and when I just, yeah, like you said, I kind of pulled from everybody and everything that were getting real results. And um, my big thing was I didn't want to be the person who could get through to people just like me or with one model of the world. I wanted to look at that. I think that girl was 13 who you're talking about. And there's people like in their 50s, 30, men, women, all over the place. I wanted to be the person who could look at somebody, not know a damn thing about who they are, but learn so much about their way of thinking and viewing the world, their problems, their desires, their needs, their fears, their secret sexual fetishes. I don't care. I wanted to understand so much about them so quickly that I knew what shifts they had to make to get where they wanted to go. And I think that's just been my obsession for the last, like, I don't know, I'm 30 now, so let's say 25 years would be probably accurate. And so in terms of you don't know how I do it, I think I'm obsessed at a level that I don't think a lot of people are. Um,
Mhm.
in a non-egotistical way, I think that's what sets me apart. But I appreciate you sharing all that you did. It's very meaningful to me to hear that. It's very meaningful for me that you took this time out to share with everybody because you have a newborn, you're doing well, you're a busy woman, you got everything going on. So I appreciate you so much. I'm sure the person on the other side of this does as well.
Oh my gosh, of course. I sometimes I'm like, how could I not share, um, what's happened? Because yeah, even if it is just one person who sees it and they're like, okay, there's a chance that I'm not stuck in this life and I can have, the life I know I'm meant to live, that I know that God wants all of us to live. Yeah, I will share anything with anybody. So thank you for even asking me to do this.
No,
Yeah.
it's my pleasure. If you're watching this and you have been touched in any way by Sony or this conversation or anything, and you're maybe thinking, okay, maybe Tyler can help me, there is a link below this video. If you can schedule a call with me, and we'll see if I can help you. Sony, thank you so much for your time. We'll stay in contact. I just love to see you
Wow.
flourishing. I'm
Thank you
proud to
so
call you a friend.
much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.